afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the ECMPS 2.0 Reengineering Project Update. Our Senior Regulatory Specialist, Mr. John Konings, will walk you through the status of the ECMPS Reengineering Project and ESC Spectrum's DAS development efforts today. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them into the question panel, and we will get those answered at the end. Thank you so much for joining us, and John, you can take it away.
Thank you, Reagan. If you can organize for a second. First off, I'd like to ask everybody to hold your questions to the end, where we'll have a question and answer session. So let's go ahead and begin. Today, we're going to review what we've learned so far about the current round of beta testing that is going on for this project. We're also going to talk about options for low mass emitters, and that Prism and Stack Vision does handle LME reporting. And then we'll also try to answer your questions regarding the reengineering project. I do want to say from the very outset that we are not making the progress that we would hope to make so far. EPA has not released all the information the DAS vendors need to complete the software updates that will become necessary. And we'll talk a little bit about what exactly we're lacking so far. So let's move on to the next slide. Whoops, excuse me. Yep. So this is the reengineering project of the ECMPS client tool. As you know, it's being handled by the Clean Air Markets Division. Chris Worley of the EPA has given several presentations of the changes that are forthcoming for the ECMPS 2.0. Those presentations are available for your review on the ECMPS 2.0 Reengineering website. Updated reporting instructions for monitoring plan records and emission records were released in June, but the DAS vendors are still waiting to see the schemas that are necessary and the updated reporting instructions for the QA records. And it's probably the QA records that are having the most changes made to them. This is because starting in 2024, if your unit is a MATS affected facility and you're using SEMS to report your MATS compliance data, this is where a lot of that those changes are occurring when it comes to the QA checks for various systems like PM monitors, mercury monitors, and other things like that. And I've included the link here to the ECMPS Reengineering Effort website. Moving on, here's a couple screen prints of the various websites or web pages that EPA is providing. This one up here in this upper left corner is for the ECMPS support, and that's generally where you can get the ECMPS newsletter. Separately, there's a second reengineering newsletter that you can sign up for, and you'll automatically get updates for that. And in this screenshot from over here, there is a link here to get you to the reengineering site as well. My recommendation is review Chris's webinars. His webinar is very helpful and well thought out. They contain the latest information that he has available at the time the presentation was given. He is the person who's leading the team, contractors and other people involved making these changes. I've again given you a link to the reengineering site there. And I just want to point out to remember that ECMPS 2.0, which is the new version of ECMPS, will go live in less than 6 months. Go live January 1st, 2024. The beta testing program has already begun. There is a separate beta testing site where you can get used to and work with existing records that have been copied over from the EPA's host computer system to the beta site. When new features are released, Chris typically has a webinar that he gives to describe what's happened and to walk you through what changes are going to be. And we expect or anticipate he'll be doing the same thing through the rest of this year and probably early next year. In my opinion, I expect some of the development work and other things will carry over into 2024. In other words, I don't think it will be completely changed over by the end of December. That's my opinion. I could be surprised and see that everything comes together nicely, but I'm being a little pessimistic at the moment. Moving on. Let's talk about an overview of the new tool. The screens look very similar to the existing screens of ECMPS 1.0. They've been cleaned up and brightened up a little bit nicer. But really, the important thing that should be occurring is that you should be doing beta testing on your system as soon as you are able to generate JSON files. JSON files, or files in the JSON format, I should say, are the only types of files that the new tool will process. XML files will not be, the new tool will not be able to import or handle XML files. So as soon as your data system can begin generating JSON files, you should begin beta testing, and therefore going into the tool now to work with the layout of the tool, see how things are going is really a good thing to do to help work you through this transition. The beta testing of the QA records, I believe, has already begun. Beta testing of the emission records, I don't believe has occurred yet. And I say I believe because I myself personally do not have access to the beta site. I'm still waiting to be added to that functionality. If you were a retrieval agent or a submittal agent under ECMPS 1.0, you will automatically be either a preparer or a submitter for ECMPS 2.0. I was neither of those until recently when I became a retrieval agent for a customer of ours, and I therefore have gone and requested to be added to or given access to the beta site as a preparer of files. That hasn't quite occurred yet, but I hope it will occur in the next week or so. Like I said before, using ECMPS 2.0 will become mandatory for data generated after hour 0 on January 1st, 2024. There will be new maths reporting records that will be required to begin submitted with the emission records, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So let's back up for a second. If you are not a MATS, if your facility or your unit is not under MATS, the mercury and air toxic standard, you still need to convert to a JSON to be able to generate JSON files. This is for everybody who currently today uses ECMPS 1.0. Everybody has to switch over to ECMPS 2.0 and begin generating JSON files from your DAS and evaluating those JSON formatted files in ECMPS 2.0, just like you evaluate XML files today in ECMPS 1.0. If your facility is a coal-fired facility that's still under the MATS rule, then there are additional reporting requirements, such as 30-day rolling averages and other things we'll talk about in a minute, that you'll have to begin reporting. I would not be surprised if this is going to require some assistance from ESC Spectrum's engineers to go into your system and make sure the configuration is tweaked and set up just right to generate all those new elements that you did not have to submit before. So, for example, if you are a mass affected unit starting January of 2024, those units that are using SEMs such as mercury traps to demonstrate compliance have new reporting requirements, like I said. And this will probably require an update to your DAS configuration. And that's where the engineering work might need to occur. There are these new reporting requirements for quality assurance checks, like a good example is an absolute correlation audit for PM SEMs. Like I said, these new reporting requirements start in the first quarter of 2024 for any data generated starting January 1st of 2024. Another example of a new hourly MATS reporting requirements are the 30-day boiler operating averages. And what you really should have done prior to this, that as your system began collecting hourly data and calculating 30-day boiler operating averages, you should have verified that this calculation is being done correctly. Haven't done that, you need to do that now to make sure that what you report to the agency is an accurate, a true, accurate, and complete number. The beta testing period is a very good opportunity to test out how these new requirements are both handled by Prism and Stack Vision and by ECMPS 2.0. So if you have the ability today to begin generating JSON files, I strongly encourage you to begin beta testing and you run those new JSON formatted files in the beta ECMPS 2.0 tool. The purpose of this is to find out if there are any bugs, either in your configuration or in the way that ECMPS 2.0 handles these files. So now is the time to get these bugs worked out, if they're present, and work it so that they're in good shape. Let's stop for a second and talk about another topic that's related to the ECMPS 2.0 tool, and that's low mass emitter units. These are units that usually operate infrequently and do not emit much for SO2 or NOx as far as mass. You have to qualify for the status, and if you do qualify, you're allowed to generate a low mass emitting file for reporting purposes. Now, I know there probably are 300 or 400 units out there that fall in this category. And Chris Worley has said that initially ECMPS 2.0 will not support the generation of emission files for LME reporting. So therefore, you need to look for a different method or another way of generating these LME, these JSON files for LME reporting. The ESC Spectrum has developed a solution for supporting LME reporting in both of our applications, both Prism and Stack Vision. And basically what the way it works is that you will provide a file in a specified format listing your operating data on a server that we will host. We will already have your configuration set up. And when you send us your operating data, we will run that operating data through the host system that we've set up for you. And we will generate a JSON file and send it back to you for your review, evaluation in the ECMPS 2.0 tool and eventual submission to the EPA. I just want to point out that this is not a free service, that you have to contract with us to provide the service to you. So along those lines then, like I said, we're going to offer this new service. We call it LME Vision. It's a customized approach to your LME reporting. And for more information, you need to contact Caroline Areno at the number listed there, which is 512-250-7914, to work with her to establish a contract to provide the service and for you to begin working with us to help generate your LME reporting files in the JSON format. For all users of ECMPS, Prism has been updated and Stack Vision have been updated. You can see Prism version 1.7 and Stack Vision version 7.3 have been updated with the ability to generate the JSON formatted files for both QA and emission files. Both applications at that point when these systems are up, or applications are updated, will continue to be able to generate XML files, but they'll also be able to generate JSON formatted files. And again, the idea there is to start the beta testing of comparing the results of evaluations between the XML files submitted and run through ECMPS 1.0 and the JSON formatted files that you run through ECMPS 2.0. If everything is set up the same, then whatever errors you get through the evaluation of an XML file in ECMPS 1.0 should result that the corresponding JSON file for that same time period should generate the same errors or lack of errors, when evaluated in ECMPS 2.0. Now, I just want to mention again that ESC Spectrum is still waiting for the new schemas to be released for these formats. They need to be released by EPA so that we can complete our development work. How do you test the functionality of the new tool? Well, you'll be encouraged to generate QA file using the usual XML format and then evaluate it in ECMPS. Then generate the same data in the JSON format and evaluate it in ECMPS 2.0. The JSON file that you just evaluated in ECMPS 2.0 should have the same errors or lack of errors as was found in the XML file. And if they don't have the same result, you need to investigate and figure out why not. It should be exactly the same. So when you're doing this testing, you can also go backwards in time. For example, you can go back to the first quarter of this year where you have the evaluation reports available for the XML files you created. You could create a JSON formatted file for the first quarter, run it through ECMPS 2.0, and therefore compare the evaluation report from ECMPS 1.0 versus, which was triggered by the XML file, and the evaluation report from ECMPS 2.0, which evaluated the new JSON formatted files. So by comparing the evaluation report from ECMPS 1.0, which is triggered by the XML file, versus the evaluation report from ECMPS 2.0, which is from the JSON formatted file, we should be able to verify that the configuration within your DAS application, whether it be Prism or Stack Vision, is set up correctly and functioning acceptably or not. We have been told by Chris Worley and others that the current profile of checks that are in ECMPS 1.0 will be maintained and that no new checks will be added at this time. Therefore, the only major change that the DAS is going through is the ability to generate and support JSON formatted files. Now, during 2023, the new maths-related reporting requirements will be added to Prism and Stack Vision for beta testing. And this will require a second upgrade to both applications, meaning that Prism will be upgraded to version 1.8 and Stack Vision will be updated to version 7.4. And this will probably occur, our best guess today, is will probably occur in February or March of next year. So that doesn't leave us a lot of time to do much more testing before this first submittal period in April of next year. So that's why it's important to do as much testing at the beta site today, 2023, rather than waiting until 2024. So the idea of working in the beta version of the new ECMPS 2.0 tool is to familiarize yourself with the sequence of steps to change or add new monitoring plan or QA records, and then how to import them and evaluate them, both with the QA and emission files. This is a screenshot of the Spedry data exchange where you normally have to go and sign up for and get a password and a username and a password for using at the beta ECMPS 2.0 site. These are a couple screenshots of the actual beta tool. There I provided you a link to the beta application test site. You log into the beta testing site after establishing your account, getting your username and password from the CDX data exchange that we showed you on the previous page. And after logging in, you can now select the monitoring plans for one or more of your sites. I also wanted to point out that over here at the top of the middle first of the reporting instruction area, for example, there's a area called the resources. And under resources, you can click and you'll find updated reporting instructions for monitoring plan records using the JSON format. Then along the left side of the page, it's divided into the home and workspace sessions. And we'll talk about what that means in a second here. Give me a second to get a drink of water. The home section is where the records for monitoring plans, QA, and certification and emission records can be viewed. These are existing sets of files that have been imported into the ECMPS tool. The workspace area, which is the lower area of the screen, is where these actual records can be opened and edited. So one area is for looking and just reviewing them. The second area is where you can actually work with them and edit them. So if you click on the down arrow by the monitoring plan records available, and it should open up to the monitoring plan records for that unit. Notice that there's a note, at least when I did this screenshot, that the QA and cert records plus emissions says the data for these two areas is not included in this initial release. These areas will be updated later. Again, I cannot personally say that I've seen if there's any data there. Maybe someone can update us when we get to the Q&A section at the end of my presentation. Initially, the EPA said only monitoring plan records would be available. So you could select your monitoring plan records and view them, or if you took them to the work area, you could actually edit them and change them. Remember, this is a beta testing area in that you are not actually changing anything that you've actually submitted to the EPA. That area is that what the EPA did is copy data from the main central computer and populated the beta testing site with copies of your data so that you can work with real data but not worry about changing anything you've officially submitted already. So far, what have we learned? So far, we're learning how to move around and use the tool. Now, the layout of the main screens is very similar to the existing tool, but there are some small differences that you should be aware of, and that working in the tool today will help you become more familiar with it. The EPA has told us they're working on a 2-week development cycle, meaning in about every other week they will be adding features to the beta testing tool to make it work and function to the same level of degree that ECMPS 1.0 does today. With each update, there should be a set of release notes that are posted. But where these notes are going to be posted remains to be seen. I assume they might be posted somewhere on the engineering website. So when using a new workspace to review or edit existing records, notice the following items. That along the right side, and I'll show you where in a second, it'll say evaluation status. Does it need to be evaluated again? Are there critical errors or no errors? Another status area is the submission status. Is it submitted already, or does it need to be submitted? Check it back in. If you've made changes, do you want to save those changes you've made? And the last status is you can revert to the official record. If you've gone in and made some changes just to see how it works, and you don't really want to save those changes, then don't save those changes. But you can also revert back to the official copy that the EPA put in the beta site for you. Also, along the upper right-hand corner of this main screen, there's a menu, which will give you to other links to other areas of interest, including environmental topics, laws and regulations, information about the EPA, accessibility, privacy and security notice. One of the things we've learned so far that the various tabs of the monitoring plan have been reorganized. You might remember in ECMPS, you had all these tabs on a horizontal line going across. Now, when you click on methods, for example, it will give you the subparts of those methods in a drop-down menu format. So this is a little bit different. Initially, I didn't care for it because I was used to the horizontal format so much from before, but I guess working with this for a little while, I'll get used to it. Along the right side, I'm talking over here, this is where you'll see the evaluation and submission status. You can see here the evaluation status says there's critical errors, and the submission status says resubmission required. So this will tell you where you currently are with that, either monitoring plan or QA records or emission records. As you make changes to a file, you can evaluate those changes, and if acceptable, save them. If an evaluation process is initiated, separate email response is generated by ECMPS 2.0 and lists the results of that evaluation. In this example, the results showed there are critical errors in the test evaluation. So here's an example of an evaluation done previously. So what have we really learned so far? Not as much as I'd like. I would prefer to see us farther along in the development and the release of the reporting instructions and of the schemas. The EPA did release updated reporting instructions for monitoring plan records and emission records back in the June-May timeframe, but they have not released the updated quality assurance records, and that's where the majority of the changes will be coming if you're a MATS reporting facility. So I'm anxious to see how the contents of the QA cert records can change from quarter to quarter. In beta testing during the QA and cert phases will be much more interesting and lively, in my opinion. There's one other thing I want to take a moment to talk about, in that under the new MATS reporting requirements, there's additional information that the EPA is requesting from the stack testers. And your stack testers will be required to, and this additional information is whether you're doing RADAs or NOx correlation testing or any type of performance testing, whether it's an annual test, show that you're in compliance with the MATS rule. No matter what that is, you need to have the stack testers be prepared to supply the data that's required from Appendix E, which are the data elements for the MATS rule, section 17 through 31. And the stack testers will need to provide XML formatted testing files to you, their customer, for the tests performed after January 1st, 2024. You will have to turn around and submit those XML files to the EPA. Steve Norfleet from Agora Engineering has developed an Excel template to help the stack testers generate these XML files. He is currently writing up the reporting instructions needed to use the template to generate these files, and I hope he was able to release them before, say, middle of November. And the last question is, you should be checking with your stack testers and asking them, are they aware of these new reporting requirements from them? Lastly, I believe this is my last slide. Yep. A lot of work is occurring behind the scenes. I personally think that sort of the log jam of work that will burst forward in late 2023 through 24 will be an interesting opportunity for all utility customers, but it's going to be especially busy for those who are MATS reporting facilities. So let me back up and just share that if you're not a MATS affected facility, need to upgrade your DAS software to begin generating JSON formatted files. Everybody who uses ECMPS 1.0 today has to go through the process of updating your DAS so that it can generate mass JSON formatted files for monitoring plans, for QA records, and emissions. Everybody who uses ECMPS 1.0 has to go through this process between now and the reporting period of next April. But if you are a MATS reporting facility, and you know who you are, then you also are going to have to upgrade your DAS to include the ability to generate the new MATS required emission records and QA records. So it's going to be a busy next couple of 6 months, in my opinion. In the future, we've invited Chris Worley, and as of last week, he told me he will be at the users group meeting we are hosting in Austin, November 7, 8, and 9. And he will be there giving a presentation, explaining where we are with the whole process, and he'll be available to answer questions. And in the past, Chris has come to our user group meetings, and he usually hangs around for about 2 days. So it gives you a chance to ask him questions one by one, if you feel a little odd standing in front of an audience and ask questions. And if you are a little more shy like that, Chris will be more than happy to talk to you one-on-one and give you the guidance you need. I've given you his address there, his email address. And we're going to open this up for questions. But before we do that, I've also included my email address and my phone number that you can contact me here at ESC. So if you want to use the dialog box, I guess, please send in your questions and Reagan will read them to me.
All righty. We've got about 4 questions. I'll start out with George Marshall's. He said, can Prism convert XML monitoring plan to JSON format, or will we need to build mon plan in ECMPS 2.0?
To be honest, I personally don't know.
I can take that, John. The way that, this is Daniel Fromm, by the way, from ESC Spectrum. The way that the ECMPS 2.0, they sort of import that monitoring plan for you as it existed. So your monitoring plan as it exists today should even exist in the beta whenever they move that over. So when they, and I think they made an announcement that ECMPS 1.0 is going to have an end of life at obviously it would be not the ending of Q4 this year, it would be at the end of January, so you can actually do your reporting for Q4. But that during the February timeframe, they're going to be moving all the QA data, all the monitoring plan emissions data, all those databases over into new ECMPS 2.0. So you would only have to, add or edit existing monitoring plan records. You're not going to be required to recreate your monitoring plan in JSON. So yay. Perfect.
We've got another question. Do all users need to update to Stack Vision 7.4 or only those with MATS?
So I'll take that one too, John.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah. So, when we released 7.3, that was sort of and Prism as well, that was sort of, ECMPS was in their beta mode. This is our first release trying to integrate into ECMPS. They had issues on their side. I think both products probably had a couple minor issues on our side. So I would recommend that, you can use 7.3 for beta testing if you're non-MATS. But I would probably recommend that you upgraded the latest release because, like I mentioned before, we have found issues on both sides, on the ECMPS side and our side.
All right. Will your existing ECMPS username and password give access to the beta test site?
No. Like I mentioned, you need to go to the CEDRI website and establish your username and ID, and that was shown on slide. And this presentation is being recorded and will become available. If you will go to slide 13, you might recall there is a screenshot of the CDX Central Data Exchange, and that's where you go to get a username and password. You establish your username and password, I should say, and then you go to the beta site and actually use it.
John, we may want to also let folks know that there may be some of you out there that already have a CDX account for other reporting purposes. This is different. There is a CDX beta account that has to be set up. So you can't use your current CDX account for beta testing. For the ECMPS 2.0 in the future, that's where you'll go. But for beta, they've set up similar to the ECMPS beta. They've set up something separate. So you'll have to get a CDX beta account. And we can, as John said, we can show you how to do that.
And I want to thank Susan for chiming in on that, because that's exactly correct. If you already have a CDX username and password, that's for making official submittals under these other monitoring programs. The beta site is a testing area separate from those official areas. And that's why you need to get a separate beta testing site username and password.
Thank you for that clarification. Has ESC Spectrum had any success importing emissions JSON files into ECMPS 2.0 so far?
Daniel, do you have any input on that?
Well, I was just going to say, you know, our QA department handles most of that, but yes, there's been varying levels of success. Like I said, sort of before, you know, ECMPS and the beta websites definitely had their share of issues, but it's gotten better recently. So we're making progress on that.
Awesome. This one is for John. Hi, John. Will LME reporting still be available for Q4 2023?
If you're asking if LME reporting will be available through ECMPS 1.0, it is my opinion or my belief that yes, it will be available for generating those files and for evaluating those files and submitting those files. But once you get into looking at hourly data for 2024, then no, Json 1.0, the current version that we use for production, will not be available for you.
All right. Will ESC Spectrum develop a list of configuration changes needed? I understand the list will be somewhat generic.
Yeah, I can speak to that one too. So engineering actually has been developing sort of a, I guess, sort of like a spot checklist of, you know, hey, if you're, you know, PM cows, you need to make sure you go into your XML EDR template and add your PM daily cow and your sample flow check cow to the EDR template. So that, I believe, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but I believe engineering is going to be presenting a similar webinar along those lines. I know that for sure that's coming at user group as well, but there is a sort of a checklist that I'm hoping that they do present to all the customers that are METS affected.
Will Stack Vision import the new JSON file, and when will that be required?
If you're talking about the monitoring plan, so the way that Stack Vision 7.3 works is that you can import either an XML monitoring plan or a JSON monitoring plan. So you could, you know, log into the beta website, download or export, I guess it's a better word, export your JSON monitoring plan and import that into Stack Vision 7.3. They both have the underlying same data. It's just like John mentioned in the very beginning, it's just a different format.
Joshua Sowell, he has a question. Let me see if I can unmute you. It's regarding stack testing data. I'll unmute you and see if you can ask this question.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So regarding one of your slides talking about stack testing data and stack testers requiring additional data to be required here, that one right there, you just had it highlighted. The second bullet, I think that should say JSON formatting testing files to their customers after January 1st. The other question that I had is, this is talking about SEMS Raddus. So is this specifically for MATS units right here, or is this for all current SEMS units where we're testing NOx? Are we going to need additional, it looks like section 17 through 31 are, I believe, regarding the MATS rule, but I just wanted to verify that.
So those are actually still supposed to be in XML. It's going to be the section 17 through 31 are XML, not JSON. Now, inside JSON formats, there are performance tests, which you do on mercury, PM, your hazardous, non-hazardous metals, and things of that nature. But those are sort of like, I would say, I don't want to say they're easier, but they're less verbose than the section 17 through 31.
Okay, that helped. And then the other question, if we're receiving stack testing data in JSON format in some cases, will the Stack Vision RADA tool, will it import JSON RADAs as well?
Yeah, so the current RADA tool actually, and it's kind of ironic, I've had this question already asked before. Right now, it's not gonna, we're definitely gonna add JSON import, but I would be surprised if that's the only thing your tester did. I actually spoke with a customer and they actually request the old EDR 2.1 formats, the old 610, 620 records. So, definitely, at least in Stack Vision, we're looking at importing JSON RADA files should your tester give them, but you still have I would be very surprised if that's all your stack tester is going to do. So we will, continue to evolve Stack Vision and add that JSON import inside RADA, but probably not for 7.4.
Thank you for all the clarifications.
Oh, no problem. And that section 17 through 31, that's the Penta U. So it is part 63 in there. But it really does say this is going to be an XML. So that caused a lot of confusion.
Thanks.
This is John. Let me share with you a past experience I had maybe 15 years ago when I worked for utility. At one particular time doing a RADA, we had to add some additional data because of the 3D flow testing that we were doing. And the stack tester sent me a hard copy report, and I manually entered all that data into Stack Vision, and it took me about 2 days. On the third day, stack tester called me about a future job, and I kind of complained to him about how hard it was to hand enter all that information. And he said, oh yeah, I was supposed to send you a CVS file with all the data. You could have simply imported it into your system. And I was glad to hear that we had the ability and they had the ability to generate CVS files, because most of my problems were me making manual entry errors and me going back and correcting my manual entry errors. And the next time I had to do it a couple of years later, I remembered to ask for that file. And they sent it to me, and it took about 15 seconds to import the whole file. It took me 2 days to do manually. So yes, you're going to want to request your stack tester to provide you these electronic files so that you don't have to manually enter them. Saves a lot on making manual entry errors. Any other questions?
Yes, we do. Selena asked if this presentation will be shared, and yes, it will be. We've been recording this entire thing, so I will have this edited and added to the customer community by at least next Tuesday, if not earlier. And then also, I'll get these presentation slides from you, John, and I'll actually upload them to the customer community as well, so people will have those for a reference. And then we've got quite a few more questions. This one is from John. What is the upgrade path for going to StackVision 7.4? Example, they are currently running StackVision 6.18.
Right. So it's a 2-hop request with one little, I guess not a gotcha, but one additional thing you need to do. So in your, you can log into the customer access portal, and obviously you can download StackVision. You'll need to download StackVision 7.0, and then you can hop to whatever that latest release is, whether that's 7.3 or 7.4. The additional thing you'll need to do is download, we changed our licensing format in StackVision 7.0. So you can go ahead and download, instead of a license key, it's an actual license file. So you can download that license file from the customer access portal, and you should be good to go. And that is only required for 7.0. You won't need to re-enter that in 7.4.
Awesome. Thank you, Daniel. John indicated LME View will not be a free product. Is that true if users are on a maintenance contract?
I really cannot answer that question, but when you talk to Caroline, she'll certainly be able to help make that determination for you.
Right.
Yeah,
I was just to sort of clarify this, if you already have a DAS like Prism or StackVision that you're generating LME files, this really isn't for you. It's more for, hey, you're maybe using ECMPS 1.0 to enter in your LME data. It's really for those units that, you don't have a DAS, StackVision, or Prism to generate LME files. And basically you submit, your load, your heat input, your time online, your QA parameters, and then we take that data and we basically create a little system and give you the JSON files back along with your monitoring plan.
all right.
And I would further add to Daniel's point, and to answer the question directly, if you don't have a current data acquisition system, I'm not sure when you say maintenance, if you mean like a maintenance contract with our service department, but if you don't have a DAS, it is a service that we do charge for. So for LME, it would be an additional cost if you don't have a DAS already.
And I believe that we have data controller defense for those of you who do not have DAS Protect agreements as well. So that's a service that we offer as well. All right, are there additional monitoring plan records that need to be added for 2.0?
That, obviously we got regs experts in here, but that probably depends on more if you're not MATS affected, I would probably say no. But if you are, I'd probably say maybe. It depends. Lots of people already have, PM already configured in there, even though, ECMPS 1.0 still ignores it. So you can go in even in 1.0 and configure HCL, PM, all that fun stuff, but they're not really checking anything for it. So it depends.
Okay.
This is John.
Go ahead.
This is John. To answer that question a little bit further, if you are not a MATS reporting person, I don't believe there's any monitoring plan changes that are triggered by moving to the JSON format. We are seeing lately a lot of people asking to have ESC Spectrum help them update their monitoring plans for various reasons. But if you are not part of MATS and you believe your monitoring plan is up to date, it would not hurt to spend an hour reviewing the reporting instructions for monitoring plan records to make sure that you are completely up to date with what's required going forward. That helps.
Perfect. Has ESC Spectrum developed a protocol for customers to submit their LME files to ESC? What is the expected turnaround time for receiving the JSON LME file?
I'll take that one. You know, we do currently have for non-DAS people who do not currently have a DAS. We do have LME customers now that we take that data. It would be part of our normal reporting service where after the end of a quarter, we do have a spreadsheet. We do have a protocol that we work with each customer to get their data. And then as part of our normal reporting service, we request that at the end of the quarter, you know, the next month, and then turn that around certainly before the reporting deadline is how that works. Hopefully that's what you were looking for.
Beautiful. XML pad was an unofficial tool used for easily reviewing XML EDRs. Does ESC Spectrum have an unofficial recommended JSON tool to provide similar functionality?
Well, I would say one of the really, really good things, I don't want to geek out or anything, but the good thing about JSON is it's very human readable. So like even things like Notepad, it's very easy to sort of read and follow along. There's plenty of, I mean, if you were to just Google JSON editors or, you know, tree or JSON tree editors, there's plenty of those around. I personally don't have a specified format or a specified tool. I still miss XML and Notepad though.
We've got another question. How about Prism importing JSON? From George Marshall. He asked earlier about Prism converting the XML mon plan to JSON format. So,
right, you can take, it's sort of the same principle as we have in Stack Vision, where you can take your JSON monitoring plan file in Prism and import it in. So you can export it out from, you know, ECMPS 2.0 and import it into Prism.
all right. Oh, George said he meant stack tester.
Right. Okay, so XML for stack testing data for Prism. As far as I know, I don't think that's going to be implemented. Specifically the section 17 through 31.
Okay. Emily is asking, is upgrading to Stack Vision 7.3 a requirement for JSON file export? What about those with version 6 of Stack Vision?
Right, so again, you have to be at 7.3 to make any JSON files. For the MATS folks, they'll need to be at 7.4, and obviously there's going to be additional fixes in 7.4 for non-MATS folks as well to comply with ECMPS changes. So if you're at Stack Vision version 6, you'll need to upgrade to 7 and then whatever that latest release is. And you'll have to have that license key I mentioned downloaded from CAP.
Okay, perfect. All right. George, Marshall, I would just recommend if you have any more like additional detailed questions, if you'd like to reach out to Daniel Frome individually, his email is dfrome@escspectrum.com, just to get those squared away and answered more easily. But does anyone else have any additional questions before we wrap it up?
There was one thing I was sort of going to follow through and mention as far as the ECMPS tool now as it exists. There is not a way to enter in any of the new MATS related information. So things like your fuel usage, your performance tests, malfunction info, compliance, all those new nodes that they added down at the bottom. There's not a way to enter that in, and it's very unclear from our discussions whether that you will even have the ability to manually add those. So again, in both products, obviously, we're making strides to, you know, get those out in a JSON format for for you, so it becomes a moot point. But I just wanted to point out that, hey, if your mat's affected and you're at 7.3, first of all, you probably don't have a way of creating malfunction info, but nor do you have a way of entering it in manually either. That's all I got.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for the great questions and being so engaged. Really appreciated everyone taking the time today to watch John's presentation. Thank you, John, for being so thorough. Like I said, this will be posted in the customer community next week, and then I'll get the presentation from John as well, and I'll have that posted in the customer community too, so you can all review that and just have it on hand. But I hope everyone has a great rest of their afternoon. Thank you so much.